Now, we all know that if you want to build a scalable business, you need to have a scalable offer. And if you're running things on a one-on-one basis, chances are you're going to need some form of check-in system, a way of keeping on top of clients and making sure that they're continually seeing success inside your offer. Now, one of the ways that we can do this is a traffic light based check-in system. And here's exactly how you could set it up. Generally, we see this cut coaches, consultants, course creators check-in time down drastically, potentially even in half, if they go from having no systems to then having this system. Now, a big thing that we want to do with this system is not automate the deliverables, because people are ultimately paying for your time and your expertise. But what we want to do is we want to automate as much as possible, so that time that you have to give is less, and the time that you do give can be to a higher level, and ultimately doing the things that are going to help them see success. So inside our platform, Systemized Scale, this is how we would do it. And these are the systems that we build on the background, essentially to facilitate the process. If you're using a lot of different softwares like Typeform, Calendly, Zapier, all these different subscriptions, our platform would essentially centralize all of those for a fraction of the cost. Now, inside our platform, if you go to opportunities, we then build out a board called client check-ins. This is essentially like a Trello board that will track all of your client check-ins. Now, what we then do is every time a new client signs up, they go into this needing setup column. This then shows you the clients that you need to set up. And when you set them up, you then drag them across into the day of the week that they're going to essentially check in on. At the minute, this is just a template, so it says add check-in day, but obviously this would then have the days of the week. For example, if you're doing check-ins on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it would have all those days. It could have every day of the week, for example. What then happens is these clients then get essentially a reminder the day before their check-in. For example, if I am essentially a coach and I'm going to do my check-ins on a Monday, we want to make sure that all of your clients' check-ins are in before that Monday, so you can then literally just do the check-ins rather than having to do all of the follow-ups. So for example, an email, a text, potentially even a WhatsApp can send out the day before, reminding them of their check-in. And the cool part about all of this is we can then vary those messages each week, so it then doesn't look robotic, and it can have the link to your check-in form. If I then haven't checked in by the day of the check-in, for example, Monday morning, I can then automatically move to this incomplete column and then get sent another email, SMS, and or WhatsApp. Then when I do check in, I will then go into the color coding system, which I'm going to show you here. You'll then see on this board that we then have essentially this color coding system of green, amber, and red. So then based off when I submit my check-in, I will then get color coded accordingly. So then as a coach, a business owner, coach, consultant, course creator, I can then come in and I can see, right, these clients are doing well, these clients are doing okay, these clients need a little bit more hand-holding. And we all know that when we're paying for a one-on-one service, if the one-on-one service often then just turns around and goes, right, cool, everything's great, keep doing what you did last week. Ultimately, like from our perspective, we know that it means that we're doing well and we're seeing success, but it then also does sometimes feel like, well, maybe I could just do that on my own. So what we then want to make sure is you're allocating your time accordingly and you're essentially giving feedback where it truly is needed. It allows you to leverage your time a little bit more and essentially make sure that we're moving these reds into greens, these ambers into greens, and we're keeping greens as greens. The more clients that are green, the more clients that check in, means better the retention rate will be, and it means then you'll have to spend less on marketing to get more clients in the first place. What this then means, you literally come in and you just go through your check-ins, your reds, your ambers, your greens, and everything else is handled for you. So here is essentially how it would work. Now, first things first, websites and forms, this literally replaces softwares like ClickFunnels, Typeform, Jotform, website builders like WordPress, essentially replaces all of these. And we then have a funnel built out called the STS-Checkin System. Inside here, we then have your check-in form on. The reason we put it on a funnel is one, we can then track data a little bit better, and two, it just looks a little bit better. So imagine then all the reminders would have this custom branded funnel on that then essentially clients are submitting their data on. Inside this funnel, we then have one step which has the check-in form on. When that check-in form submitted, it then goes to essentially a thank you page. This then means that you can also customize this a little bit more, so that then when clients submit their check-in, they could go to different thank you pages based on if they're green, if they're amber, or they're red. And then you can also give them a little bit more support. Inside automation, this replaces softwares like Zapier, and you don't have to pay per task. With ours, you can have unlimited automations. We want you to use the platform more. We don't want to penalize you for the sake of using the platform. Doesn't make sense. We want to reward you because it's loyalty of using the platform. So we then have 3 automations that run what we call the STS-Checkin System. The first one is sending out the reminders. The second is sending out the incomplete reminders if people haven't checked in on time. And the other is then notifying the coach, and then also color coding the check-ins into green, amber, and red. So we'll dive into them. So the first one here is the check-in reminder. At the top, we then have the trigger, and this trigger is when someone is moved to that certain column on the check-in board. So how earlier on the client check-in opportunity board, we had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is then triggered. For example, if we were gonna do a Monday reminder, this would then be triggered when someone's moved to Monday. What it will then do is it will make sure that they are essentially subscribed to the platform, so they're not essentially unsubscribed. We want to be able to contact them. They've chosen to be. We tag them, and then we update their check-in source. So we then know essentially from like a back-end perspective, they are doing check-ins on Monday. What we then do is we wait until the day before. So for example, if we're doing check-ins on a Monday, chances are we want that in as soon as possible on a Monday. So we then want to reach out to them the day before, for example, Sunday. We could then reach out to them early doors Sunday, and we could say reach out to them at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., 10 a.m., whatever time you want to do. This can then trigger out an email. It tags them as incomplete, which then triggers the incomplete reminder, but I'll show you that in a second because we then put a delay on it and we remove them from it if they have checked in before that should go out. I'll show you more. Then we wait 8 hours after the email, and we then just drop in with an SMS and or WhatsApp, and then the system waits 3 days, and it literally then just loops around. So then that happens every single week, and we then have a recurring check-in reminder. It then means that you're not having to send out that reminder every week or pay someone to do it, because we can just automate it for free. The benefit of automating, it happens every single time that it needs to. No one's ill, no one's sick, no human error, it just happens. This is then the incomplete reminder. So you'll see along the top, we have 2 options. For example, we have one option when someone's moved to the incomplete column. So for example, if a coach manually drags onto the incomplete column on the check-in board, it could then trigger. And then we also have one trigger when the tag is added. So you'll see in the previous automation, we added the tag incomplete check-in reminder, which then triggers this. We then make sure that they're still subscribed, and then the automation will split. So if they've been moved to incomplete, it will go down here. If they've been tagged as incomplete, it will then go down here. What this then means is the system, if they've been dragged to incomplete, the coach wants that to go out straight away. So that can then trigger the email, SMS, and or WhatsApp straight away as another follow-up. And then if they've been tagged, they're tagged when the reminder sends out. So we then give them a 24-hour window to check in. So you'll see it will then wait 1 day. If they still haven't checked in, it will then move them to incomplete, send the email, send the text and or WhatsApp, and then remove the tag. So then next week when the tag's added, it will then trigger again. It wouldn't re-trigger if we didn't remove the tag, because we can't add a tag when the tag's already on them. But what we want to do is we want to then make sure that if they then check in this window here, that they're removed from the automation, because otherwise they're going to get an email, text, and WhatsApp, even though they've already checked in. So that's where the next automation comes in. You'll then see in this automation, this is triggered when the check-in form is submitted. It then updates the contact's profile. So then every week their answers are added to their profile, and it builds up and up and up. And then we send out an email notification to the coach. So then the coach knows, right, that person's checked in. These are all their answers, they can overview them. We then remove that incomplete tag, and we remove them from the incomplete follow-up. So what this means is these are then removed so that they get no more follow-ups because they have checked in. The system then splits here, and based off their answers, it will assess if they're green, they're amber, or they're red, and then it will move them to the appropriate column on the board. For example, the green column, the amber column, or the red column, so that the coach can come in, they can see where their clients are, and they can do their check-ins accordingly. This then means that they're having to do nothing apart from literally just give their check-in feedback. And then using this process, they're able to leverage themselves out of doing all of the admin work, and they can then onboard more clients with the same amount of time, so they're not having to spend more time when more clients come on. If they had this in place, it would cut down their time. They could fill their diary with more clients instead of more admin, and then ultimately increase their revenue.